Captain Jake Morrison checked his instruments one more time as his ship moved through space. The UES Denver was not a warship. It was a simple cargo vessel carrying medical supplies to the outer colonies. Jake had been doing supply runs for 15 years, and never once had trouble with alien ships. His crew of 12 people were all civilians. They had doctors, engineers, and supply officers aboard. None of them carried weapons. Humans had signed peace treaties with all the alien races in the galaxy. There was no need for weapons when everyone got along. Jake looked at the star map on his screen. They were in neutral space, far from any military zones. The cargo hold was full of medicine and medical equipment. The colonies on Kepler 442b had sent a distress call about a plague outbreak. People were dying and needed help fast. The other ships in their convoy were spread out across the area. 17 ships total, all carrying different supplies. Some had terraforming equipment to help build new worlds. Others carried families moving to start new lives on distant planets. The UES Mercy was a hospital ship with a full medical team ready to treat plague victims. Everything seemed normal until the warning alarm started screaming. "Captain," called out his sensor officer, Lisa Chen. "I'm picking up ships coming out of hyperspace. Big ones." Jake frowned and looked at his displays. Ships were appearing all around them. Not just one or two, but dozens. The hull designs looked familiar. These were Zephyrian vessels, one of the powerful alien races that belonged to the Galactic Council. "Strange," Jake said. "They're not scheduled to be in this area." Open communications. Before Lisa could respond, the first energy blast hit their ship. The Denver shook hard and sparks flew from several control panels. Jake grabbed his chair to keep from falling. "What the hell was that?" he shouted. More blasts hit them. Through the main screen, Jake could see the Zephyrian ships firing on all the human vessels in the convoy. Bright energy beams cut through space like deadly lightning. "They're attacking us," Lisa said in shock. "All ships are under attack." Jake couldn't believe it. This had to be some kind of mistake. Humans and Zephyrians had been trading partners for decades. There had never been any problems between their species. "Send a message on all frequencies," Jake ordered. "Tell them we're civilians." "Tell them we're carrying medical supplies." Lisa worked frantically at her station. "I'm trying, Captain. They're jamming our communications. I can't get through." The UES Denver took another hit. This time the blast was stronger. Warning lights flashed red all over the bridge. Jake could smell smoke coming from the damaged systems. On his screen, he watched in horror as one of the family transport ships exploded. The UES New Hope had been carrying 300 people, including children. Now it was just a cloud of burning debris floating in space. "Captain," Lisa called out with tears in her eyes, "the hospital ship is gone. The Mercy just took a direct hit to their reactor." Jake felt sick. Dr. Sarah Williams had been aboard that ship with her entire medical team. 20 doctors and nurses who had volunteered to help fight the plague. All dead now for no reason Jake could understand. The Zephyrian ships were not just shooting randomly. They moved with purpose, targeting the human vessels one by one. When escape pods launched from damaged ships, the aliens hunted them down and destroyed them too. Jake realized with growing horror that this was not a battle. This was a massacre. "Get on the emergency channel," he told Lisa. "Any frequency that might get through. Tell anyone listening what's happening here." Lisa nodded and started broadcasting. Her voice shook as she spoke. "This is Captain Morrison of the UES Denver to any listening station. We are under unprovoked attack by Zephyrian forces. We have no weapons capable of defending ourselves. We repeat, we are civilian vessels carrying medical supplies to plague victims." Another blast hit their ship. This time Jake heard the sound of metal tearing. Their hull was starting to break apart. The life support systems were failing. Through his screen, Jake watched the last of the cargo ships die. The UES Harvest had been carrying farming equipment and seeds to help colonists grow food. The crew tried to surrender by shutting down their engines, but the Zephyrians destroyed them anyway. Only a few ships were left now. Jake could see the UES Portland trying to escape. Commander Lisa Hayes was pushing her transport ship as hard as she could toward the edge of the system. The Zephyrians were chasing her, but she might make it to hyperspace. Jake's ship shook again. More systems failed. He could hear his crew shouting reports of damage from all over the vessel. They had maybe a few minutes before the Denver broke apart completely. "Lisa," he said quietly to his communications officer, "add this to the message. Tell Earth we tried to surrender. Tell them the Zephyrians wouldn't listen." Jake looked around his bridge one last time. These people had trusted him to keep them safe. They had families back on Earth who would never see them again, all because they had tried to help sick people on a distant world. The final blast hit their reactor. Jake felt the ship start to tear itself apart as the power systems overloaded. The last thing he saw was the Zephyrian command ship moving toward the next group of human vessels. In the command center of the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kexthon watched the destruction with satisfaction. His forearms gestured proudly as he prepared his victory report for the Galactic Council. "The human infestation has been eliminated," he announced to his crew. "Their primitive vessels offered no resistance to our superior weapons." Kexthon had convinced himself that the humans were a threat. Their ships had metal hulls and powerful engines. With some modifications, they could have been turned into warships. It was better to destroy them now before they became dangerous. He did not bother to check what the human ships had actually been carrying. He did not care that they had been trying to save lives instead of taking them. In his mind, he had just won a great victory for the Zephyrian Empire. The Admiral began composing his report to the Council. He would tell them how he had protected the galaxy from human aggression. He would be praised for his quick thinking and military skill. Admiral Kexthon had no idea that he had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. The Galactic Council chamber was one of the most impressive buildings in the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of alien species gathered here to make decisions that affected billions of lives. Today, the mood in the Great Hall was tense and confused. Council Prime Yilmora stood at the center of the chamber. Her crystalline body normally glowed with calm blue light, but today the colors were dark and troubled. She had called this emergency meeting after receiving disturbing reports from the outer systems. Admiral Kexthon of the Zephyrian Empire stood proudly before the council. His report had been clear and simple. Human ships had been destroyed in what he called a defensive action. He claimed the humans had been preparing for war and needed to be stopped. "The threat has been eliminated," Kexthon announced. 17 human vessels were destroyed before they could threaten council space. My fleet acted quickly and decisively. Many of the council members seemed satisfied with this report. The Zephyrians were known for their military strength. If they said the humans were dangerous, it must be true. But Councillor Vexhai of the Triton Federation was not convinced. His species were natural investigators, and something about this story did not make sense. Humans had been peaceful traders for over 60 years. They had never shown aggression toward any council member. "Admiral," Vexhai said in his careful way, "can you provide details about these human military preparations? What weapons did they carry? What threat did they pose?" Kexthon seemed annoyed by the questions. Their ships had strong hulls and powerful engines. They could have been converted to warships at any time. It was better to act before they became a real danger. Vexhai was not satisfied with this answer. After the council meeting ended, he began his own investigation. What he discovered made his blood run cold. The human ships had not been military vessels at all. They were cargo ships, hospital ships, and passenger transports. The powerful engines Kexthon mentioned were standard civilian drives used for long-distance travel. The strong hulls were simply good engineering to protect against space debris. More disturbing was what the ships had been carrying: medical supplies for plague victims, terraforming equipment to help build new colonies, families moving to start peaceful lives on distant worlds. Vexhai gathered all the evidence he could find: shipping records, communications logs, survivor reports. Every piece of information told the same terrible story. The Zephyrians had attacked completely innocent people. 3 days after the first council meeting, Vexhai requested another emergency session. This time he came prepared with proof. "Council members," Vexhai announced as he activated the holographic displays, "I have completed my investigation into the Zephyrian attack. What I found will shock you all." The displays showed detailed scans of the destroyed human ships. The cargo holds had contained medicine, not weapons. The passenger areas had been filled with families, not soldiers. The most damaging evidence was the communications records. "These are the final transmissions from the human ships," Vexhai said. "Listen carefully." Captain Morrison's voice filled the chamber. His desperate plea for help echoed off the walls. The council members could hear the fear and confusion in his words as he tried to explain that they were civilians. "This is Captain Morrison to any listening station. We are under unprovoked attack by Zephyrian forces. We have no weapons capable of defending ourselves. Tell Earth we tried to surrender. The recording ended with the sound of an explosion. Captain Morrison and his crew were dead, killed while trying to deliver medicine to plague victims. Council Prime Yilmora's crystalline form flickered with shock and horror. The colors in her body shifted to deep red, a sign of extreme distress in her species. "Admiral Kexthan," she said in a voice that shook with anger. "Explain this immediately. You told us you destroyed military vessels." Kexthan looked uncomfortable for the first time. His forearms moved nervously as he tried to defend his actions. "The ships could have been converted to military use. My intelligence suggested they might be planning an attack. Your intelligence was wrong," shouted Councillor Drakmon of the Hegemony. "Completely and catastrophically wrong. You have committed genocide against a peaceful species." The evidence kept getting worse. Bexai showed records of the plague outbreak on Kepler 442b. Thousands of aliens were dying from a disease that human doctors knew how to treat. The destroyed medical supplies would have saved countless lives. Dr. Ben Carter was one of the few human survivors. His escape pod had been picked up by a Hegemony patrol ship. Now he testified to the council from his hospital bed, his arm wrapped in healing bandages. "They hunted us down like animals," Carter said, his voice weak but clear. "We kept trying to tell them we were doctors and nurses. We were there to help people. They didn't care." Carter described watching the hospital ship UES Mercy explode. 20 medical volunteers had died instantly, along with all their equipment and supplies. These people had risked their lives to help strangers, only to be murdered for their kindness. Ambassador Mary Phillips represented humanity in the council. She was normally a calm and diplomatic woman, but today her composure was cracking. She stood before the assembly with tears in her eyes. "For 67 years," she said, "humanity has served the galactic community. We have provided medicine, engineering, and agricultural knowledge to help other species. We have never raised weapons against any council member, and this is how you repay our trust." The council chamber fell silent. Many of the alien representatives looked ashamed. They had trusted the Zephyrians without question. None of them had bothered to verify the facts. Council Prime Yilmora tried to find words that could somehow fix this disaster. "Ambassador Phillips, the council deeply regrets this tragic mistake. We will ensure that those responsible are punished." Mary Phillips looked around the chamber at all the alien faces. Some showed genuine remorse. Others just looked worried about the political consequences. None of them seemed to understand the true horror of what had happened. 17 ships, Phillips said quietly. 437 people. Doctors, engineers, farmers, children, all dead because you believed we were dangerous without any proof. She paused and took a deep breath. When she spoke again, her voice was steady and cold. "Humanity has always believed that peace was possible through understanding and cooperation. Today you have taught us a different lesson. You have shown us that in this galaxy, the innocent die while the guilty make excuses." Phillips gathered her papers and prepared to leave. "I am returning to Earth to report this massacre to my government. I suggest you prepare for the consequences of your actions." As the human ambassador walked out of the chamber, the council members sat in stunned silence. They had allowed genocide to happen through carelessness and prejudice. Now they would have to face the results of their failure. None of them realized that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. Deep beneath the Colorado Mountains on Earth lay a facility that most humans had forgotten existed. The Terran Defense Archives had been sealed for over 70 years, ever since humanity joined the galactic community and chose the path of peace. General Rick Thompson stood before the massive vault door with his hand hovering over the security scanner. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. For 30 years he had served as the guardian of humanity's buried past, hoping this day would never come. "Sir," said Lieutenant Amy Foster, his young aide, "President Washington has confirmed the authorization. Protocol 7 is now active." Thompson closed his eyes for a moment. Protocol 7 was the code name for humanity's return to war. It had been written into the defense plans when Earth first joined the Galactic Council, but everyone hoped it would never be needed. The scanner read Thompson's handprint and retinal pattern. Ancient security systems hummed to life as the vault door began to open. Inside were the weapons, strategies, and technologies that humanity had locked away when they chose to become peaceful traders and doctors. "Contact Admiral Collins at Luna Station," Thompson ordered. Tell him the old protocols are now in effect. All human assets are to be recalled immediately. Amy nodded and began sending coded messages across the galaxy. To anyone listening, the messages seemed like normal business communications. Only humans knew what they really meant. Throughout galactic space, the reaction was immediate. Human ships that had been loading cargo at alien ports suddenly finished their business and left. Human doctors treating patients in alien hospitals completed their shifts and boarded transport vessels. Human engineers maintaining critical systems on alien worlds submitted their resignations and disappeared. Captain Steve Martinez had been overseeing grain shipments on the Zephyrian homeworld. When the coded message reached him, he read it twice to make sure he understood, then began the evacuation procedures he had memorized but never expected to use. "Pack everything," he told his crew. "Leave nothing behind that they can study or copy." Within 6 hours, every human on the planet was gone. Their ships, their equipment, and most importantly, their knowledge had vanished like smoke. The Zephyrians didn't even realize what was happening until it was too late. On industrial worlds where humans managed power plants and manufacturing facilities, entire sectors went dark as the human technicians followed the recall order. The aliens had grown dependent on human expertise without realizing it. The Altarian colonies, where the plague was still killing thousands, watched in despair as human medical teams abandoned their work. Without human doctors and medicine, the death rate doubled within days. But the Council assumed this was just fear. They thought humans were running away to avoid Zephyrian revenge. They had no idea what was really happening. On Earth, the transformation was remarkable to see. Ships that had appeared to be civilian cargo vessels revealed their true nature. Hidden weapon systems emerged from concealed compartments. Armor plating that had looked decorative proved to be military-grade protection. The UES Portland limped into Earth orbit with battle damage from the Zephyrian attack. Commander Lisa Hayes brought news of the massacre and detailed sensor readings of Zephyrian ships and weapons. "How many did we lose?" asked Admiral Pete Collins when Hayes reported to Luna Station. 437 people, Hayes replied, including the medical team that was going to save the Altarian colonies. Collins was a veteran of the old Earth wars before humanity joined the galactic community. He had spent decades as a civilian administrator, but he had never forgotten his military training. "Then we make them pay for every life," Collins said grimly. "Activate the shipyards. Begin full military production." The shipyards around Earth had been building cargo vessels and passenger ships for 70 years. But the facilities were designed to be converted to military production in case of emergency. Workers who had been building peaceful merchant ships began assembling warships instead. Dr. Helen Rodriguez had been a civilian researcher studying alien cultures. Now she found herself appointed as Secretary of Alien Affairs, responsible for managing humanity's withdrawal from galactic society. "The aliens keep asking why we're leaving," she reported to President Kelly Washington. "They don't understand that this is preparation for war." President Washington had been elected as a peace candidate. She had spent her career promoting trade and cultural exchange with alien species, but she was also a former military officer who understood the reality of galactic politics. "Let them wonder," Washington replied. "The longer they remain confused, the more time we have to prepare." The first sign that something serious was happening came when human merchant vessels throughout the galaxy simply vanished. Ships that had been regular visitors to alien ports for decades stopped coming. Trade routes that had been profitable for generations went silent. Captain Bill Anderson had been running supply ships to the outer colonies for 20 years. To the aliens, he was just another human trader. They didn't know he was actually a former military officer keeping watch on alien military movements. Now Anderson stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, humanity's first new warship to be completed. The ship looked nothing like the peaceful traders that aliens were used to seeing. It was built for one purpose: war. "All stations report ready," Anderson announced to his crew. "We are now officially part of the Terran Defense Fleet." Throughout human space, similar scenes were playing out. Ships that had carried grain and medicine now carried weapons and soldiers. Colonies that had grown food for alien worlds now produced military supplies. The entire human economy shifted from peace to war in a matter of weeks. The aliens began to notice the changes, but they misunderstood what they meant. The Triton Federation complained that human food shipments had stopped. The hegemony protested that human engineers were no longer available to maintain their technology. Counselor Vexhai, who had exposed the truth about the Zephyrian massacre, tried to contact Ambassador Phillips on Earth. His messages went unanswered. The human embassy on Nexus Prime had been abandoned, its staff recalled to Earth. Something is wrong, Vexhai told Council Prime Yilmora. This is not just fear. The humans are planning something. But Yilmora was focused on trying to manage the political crisis caused by the Zephyrian attack. She didn't have time to worry about human trade patterns. The Council's biggest mistake was assuming they understood human nature. They had seen humans as peaceful traders and helpful doctors for so long that they forgot an important truth. Any species capable of interstellar travel must have survived countless wars to reach that level of technology. Humanity had not always been peaceful. For thousands of years they had fought wars on their home world. They had developed weapons and strategies that the galaxy had never seen. When they joined the galactic community, they had chosen to hide this dark history, but they had never forgotten it. Admiral Collins stood in the Terran Defense Command Center, watching displays that showed human forces gathering throughout the galaxy. Ships, soldiers, and weapons were moving into position according to plans that had been written decades ago but never used. "How long until we're ready?" he asked his staff. 72 hours, sir," replied his operations officer. "All human assets will be in position." Collins nodded. The Zephyrians had made their choice when they murdered innocent civilians. Now humanity would show them the consequences of that choice. The galaxy was about to learn what humans were really capable of when they chose war instead of peace. The Zephyrian Empire controlled 14 star systems and commanded the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Their ships were massive and heavily armed. Their soldiers were trained from birth for war. Admiral Kexthan believed his empire was untouchable. That confidence lasted exactly 18 hours after humanity declared war. The human declaration came as a simple message broadcast on all galactic frequencies. Admiral Collins appeared on screens throughout Council space wearing a military uniform that no alien had seen before. "Citizens of the galaxy," Collins announced, "the Zephyrian Empire has committed acts of genocide against innocent human civilians. We demand the immediate surrender of all Zephyrian military forces and the trial of those responsible for war crimes." Collins paused and looked directly into the camera. "The Zephyrian government has 24 hours to comply. After that time, humanity will consider itself at war with the Zephyrian Empire." Admiral Kexton laughed when he heard the message. The humans had no military ships that he knew about. Their largest vessels were cargo ships and passenger transports. What could they possibly do against the might of the Zephyrian fleet? "Ignore their threats," Kexton told his commanders. "Prepare our forces to destroy any human ships that enter our territory." The attack came without warning, just as the Zephyrians had attacked the human convoy. But this time, the targets were ready. Captain Ron Davis commanded the human strike force that hit the Zephyrian military shipyards at Kexhai Prime. His 12 ships faced a defensive force of over 200 Zephyrian vessels, plus orbital defense platforms and planetary energy shields. To any outside observer, it looked like suicide. 12 small ships against an entire fleet. The Zephyrians prepared to destroy the humans quickly and completely. The battle lasted 4 minutes. Human ships emerged from hyperspace in a formation that Zephyrian sensors couldn't track properly. Their vessels used stealth technology that made them nearly invisible until the moment they opened fire. Davis watched his tactical display as the human ships moved through the Zephyrian formation like ghosts. Enemy sensors couldn't lock onto them. Enemy weapons couldn't target what they couldn't see. "All ships, this is Davis," he announced on the command frequency. "Begin attack run. Target the shipyards first, then military installations. Avoid all civilian areas." The human weapons were unlike anything the Zephyrians had encountered. Instead of energy beams or plasma bolts, they fired solid projectiles at incredible speeds. The kinetic energy weapons tore through Zephyrian shields like they were made of paper. Zephyrian ships that had seemed invincible suddenly found their hulls ripped open by weapons they couldn't even see coming. Their energy shields, designed to stop plasma and laser fire, were useless against solid metal, moving at near light speed. Admiral Kexthan stood on the bridge of his flagship watching his fleet die around him. Ships that had taken years to build were destroyed in seconds. The orbital defense platforms that protected his homeworld exploded one by one. Return fire, he screamed at his weapons officers. Destroy those human ships. But the Zephyrian gunners couldn't target the human vessels. Every time they thought they had a lock, the human ship would vanish from their sensors. They were firing at ghosts. The human ships appeared and disappeared like deadly spirits. They would emerge from stealth just long enough to fire, then vanish again before the Zephyrians could respond. It was like fighting an enemy that could turn invisible at will. Commander Danny Parker led the human ground forces that landed on Kex High Prime after the orbital defenses were destroyed. His mission was to capture the Zephyrian command centers and free any prisoners. What they found shocked even the hardened human soldiers. The Zephyrians had been keeping slave populations on their mining worlds. Hundreds of thousands of aliens from dozens of species, forced to work in terrible conditions. Rules of engagement remain in effect. Parker reminded his troops as they advanced through the mining complex. Protect the civilians. Any Zephyrian soldiers who surrender are to be treated according to galactic law. The freed slaves stared in amazement as human soldiers shared their food and water with former Zephyrian guards, alongside their prisoners. Even in war, humans maintained their principles. Why do you help our guards? Asked a freed Altarian worker. They kept us as slaves. Parker looked at the wounded Zephyrian soldier his medic was treating. Because that's what separates us from them. We don't become monsters just because we're fighting monsters. The news of the Zephyrian defeat spread across the galaxy at light speed. In 6 days, humanity had destroyed an empire that had taken centuries to build. 14 star systems had fallen to human forces without a single civilian casualty. The speed and efficiency of the human victory was terrifying to watch. Zephyrian fleets that had ruled space for generations were swept aside like insects. Military bases that had never been threatened were captured in hours. But more disturbing than the military defeat was the discovery of what the Zephyrians had been hiding. The slave camps were just the beginning. Human investigators found evidence of genocide against weaker species, secret weapons programs, and plans to conquer neutral worlds. Council Prime Yilmora watched the reports with growing horror. The Zephyrians hadn't just attacked innocent humans, they had been planning to attack other council members too. How could we not have known? She asked Counselor Vexhai. Because we trusted them, Vexhai replied sadly, just as we trusted them when they said the humans were dangerous. The final blow came when human forces captured Admiral Kexthon himself. The proud Zephyrian leader who had boasted about destroying defenseless humans was found hiding in a bunker on his homeworld. Captain Anderson, now commanding the Free World's defense fleet, accepted Kexthon's surrender personally. The disgraced admiral looked nothing like the confident warrior who had reported his victory to the council. You destroyed innocent people, Anderson said quietly. Doctors who were trying to save lives. Families who were just trying to find new homes. Children who had never hurt anyone. Kexthon tried to justify his actions. They were a threat to galactic peace. Their ships could have been converted to military use. Anderson looked at the alien who had started this war. Any ship can be converted to military use. Any tool can be turned into a weapon. That doesn't make it right to murder people who are using them for good. The fallen admiral was taken into custody to await trial for war crimes. His empire was dissolved and his territories placed under human protection. The slaves were freed and given the choice to return home or join the growing alliance of species that supported human leadership. Meanwhile, on Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council tried to understand what had happened. In less than a week, the balance of power in the galaxy had completely changed. Humanity had revealed itself as the strongest military force anyone had ever seen. They could have conquered us all, Counselor Drachmon said during an emergency session, but they only attacked the Zephyrians. They only fought those who had committed crimes. That makes them more dangerous, not less, replied another council member. They have principles. You can't buy them or threaten them. You can only earn their respect or face their justice. Council Prime Yilmora received a final message from Admiral Collins on Earth. The human commander appeared on her screen wearing the same grim expression he had shown throughout the war. Council Prime, Collins said formally. The Zephyrian Empire has been defeated, and its leaders will face trial for their crimes. However, humanity no longer trusts the Galactic Council to protect innocent species. Yilmora tried to interrupt, but Collins continued. Effective immediately. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council. We will no longer provide medical, engineering, or agricultural support to member species. Any attempt to enter human space will be considered an act of war. Admiral Collins, Yilmora pleaded, surely we can resolve this through negotiation. The Zephyrian attack was not authorized by the Council. Authorized or not, Collins replied coldly. It happened because the Council failed in its duty to protect peaceful species. Humanity will provide for its own security from now on. The transmission ended, leaving the Council in stunned silence. They had lost not only their most helpful member species, but also the protection that human knowledge and medicine had provided. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had shown that they were not the peaceful merchants everyone thought they were. They were something far more dangerous, warriors with principles, soldiers who fought only for justice. And justice, as the galaxy was learning, could be more terrifying than any conquest. 6 months after the fall of the Zephyrian Empire, the galaxy had learned to live with a new truth. Humans were not the peaceful merchants they had pretended to be for 70 years. They were something much more complex and dangerous. Dr. Helen Rodriguez stood in what had once been the Zephyrian capital city. The massive buildings that had housed the Empire's government now served as the headquarters for the Free Worlds Alliance. The organization included dozens of species that had chosen freedom over Council membership. The Council keeps asking why we didn't reveal our true capabilities, Rodriguez said to a gathering of alien ambassadors. The answer is simple. We hoped we would never need them. The transformation had been startling for the galaxy to witness. Human cargo ships had revealed hidden weapons and armor. Peaceful colonies had turned into military bases overnight. The entire human civilization had shifted from civilian to military mode in a matter of weeks. Captain Bill Anderson commanded the Free World's defense fleet from his flagship, the UES Liberty. His forces included not just human ships, but vessels crewed by aliens from dozens of different species. Former Zephyrian slaves worked alongside Altarian refugees and Triton exiles. The Council calls us warmongers, Anderson explained to his mixed crew during a training exercise. But look around you, former enemies working together, different species learning to trust each other. We didn't start this war to conquer anyone. We fought it to set people free. The freed slave populations had been the biggest revelation of the war. The Zephyrians had been hiding their crimes for centuries, keeping entire species in bondage while pretending to be civilized members of the galactic community. Now those former slaves had become citizens of the Free Worlds Alliance. They worked in human factories, served on human ships, and helped build a new kind of society based on freedom rather than power. But the war's aftermath had created problems that no one had expected. The Galactic Council was struggling to survive without human support. Their medical systems were failing without human doctors. Their agricultural programs were collapsing without human farming techniques. On the Council world of Nexus Prime, thousands of people were dying from diseases that human medicine could have cured easily. Terraforming projects that had depended on human engineering were failing, leaving entire colonies without life support. Council Prime Yilmora stood before empty halls where human representatives had once sat. The crystalline being had lost much of her natural glow, appearing gray and lifeless. How many Council worlds are now experiencing food shortages? She asked her staff. 14 systems, Prime, replied her aide. The human agricultural advisors left behind no documentation. Without their knowledge, crop yields have dropped by 60%. The economic impact was devastating. Human innovations had become so integrated into galactic society that removing them caused systems to collapse. Entire industries that had depended on human expertise simply stopped working. Ambassador Mary Phillips now represented the Free Worlds Alliance rather than just humanity. She had agreed to one final meeting with the Council to discuss the crisis that was spreading across their territory. You made a choice when you allowed the genocide of innocent humans, Phillips said to the assembled Council members. You chose to believe that peace meant weakness, that kindness meant vulnerability. You were wrong. The Council chamber that had once been filled with confident alien leaders now seemed empty and desperate. Many species had already left to join the Free Worlds Alliance. Others were considering following them. What would you have us do? Asked Council Prime Yilmora. Our people are dying without human medicine. Our worlds are failing without human technology. Phillips looked around the chamber at the aliens who had once been humanity's partners and friends. Some of them had genuinely tried to prevent the massacre. Others had simply stood by and watched it happen. Then perhaps you should have thought of that before you decided we were expendable, Phillips replied quietly. The council's final attempt at reconciliation came through Councillor Vexhai. He was one of the few council members who had tried to stop the tragedy from the beginning. Now he traveled to the human colony of New Geneva, where President Kelly Washington maintained the free world's capital. The colony was a remarkable sight. Humans, Altarians, former Zephyrian slaves, and refugees from dozens of species worked together in the clean, efficient city. Children of different species played together in parks built on former battlefields. We were wrong, Vexhai admitted when he met with President Washington. The Zephyrian Empire has fallen. Their leaders face justice. We have reformed our military oversight. What more can we do to earn forgiveness? President Washington was a former combat veteran who had spent 30 years disguised as a civilian administrator. She looked out at the thriving multi-species city beyond her office window. Counselor, she said quietly, forgiveness isn't something you earn. It's something you prove you deserve. For 70 years, humanity tried to prove we deserved peace. The council's response was to let us be slaughtered for helping plague victims. She turned to face the alien diplomat. Her expression was neither angry nor cold, but infinitely sad. The galaxy has seen what humans are capable of when we choose war. Perhaps someday, if you prove you've truly changed, you'll be worthy of seeing what we can accomplish when we choose peace again. Vexhai left Earth carrying the knowledge that humanity had become the galaxy's greatest power not through conquest, but through the simple act of defending the innocent. The Council had awakened something they didn't understand and couldn't control. In the months that followed, more species left the Council to join the Free Worlds Alliance. They came not because humans conquered them, but because humans offered them something the Council never had: true equality and protection for the weak. Captain Davis, who had led the attack on the Zephyrian shipyards, now commanded a deep space exploration fleet. His ships carried scientists and diplomats instead of weapons, searching for new worlds and new species to welcome into the Alliance. We're not trying to build an empire, Davis explained to a newly contacted alien species. We're trying to build something better, a society where strength protects the weak instead of exploiting them. The Free Worlds Alliance grew larger every month. Species that had been oppressed by stronger neighbors found protection under human leadership. Peaceful civilizations that had lived in fear now thrived under the Alliance's protection. But humanity never forgot the lesson of the Zephyrian War. Peace was precious, but it could only exist when good people were willing to fight for it. The galaxy was full of predators who would always see kindness as weakness. On Earth, children learned about the war in their history classes. They studied the mistakes that had led to tragedy and the courage that had ended it. Most importantly, they learned that being strong meant protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Admiral Collins, now retired, often visited the memorial built for the victims of the Zephyrian massacre. 437 names were carved in black stone, representing the doctors, engineers, and families who had died trying to help others. They wanted to save lives, Collins would tell young officers who came to pay their respects. They died because they believed in the goodness of others. Our job is to make sure their sacrifice means something. The memorial's inscription was simple but powerful. They died as they lived, trying to heal instead of harm. Their memory lights our way to a better galaxy. Years passed and the Free Worlds Alliance continued to grow. Former enemies became friends. Weak species found strength in unity. The galaxy slowly learned that there was another way to live besides the law of the strongest. Sometimes council delegations would visit the human worlds, hoping to negotiate some kind of reconciliation. They always left disappointed but thoughtful. Humanity wasn't interested in revenge or conquest. They had built something new and better, and they invited others to join them. But joining required a commitment to the same principles humans had died for: protection of the innocent, justice for the oppressed, the strength to fight when fighting was necessary, and the wisdom to choose peace when peace was possible. The galaxy was learning that hope could be more powerful than fear, that justice backed by strength was the foundation of true peace, and humanity, the species that had once hidden their true nature to avoid conflict, had become the teachers of a lesson the galaxy desperately needed to learn. In the end, The Council's greatest mistake had given birth to something wonderful. By attacking innocent humans, they had forced humanity to reveal not just their capacity for war, but their commitment to something higher than mere survival. The galaxy would never again underestimate the species that fought only to protect others, and won by showing mercy to their enemies. Humanity had found their place in the stars not as conquerors, but as guardians of the innocent and champions of justice.